Hey guys, and welcome to a video where I'm going to be discussing the Season 3 patch note changes. There's a lot to go over. Let's get on into it. So there's a new Joust map. I don't play Joust that much, so that's not really for me, but there's a lot of player base that does play Joust, so this is really cool for them. The one cool thing that they did was the new jungle boss. It disables towers for a short period of time. This makes it easier for guides that have difficulty killing towers, but are good at team fighting, or 1v1ing, I guess you can say. So that's a cool little change that they did for Joust. I'm not going to be talking about any god skins or any little things like that. I just want to talk about completely balanced changes in terms of new items and the god balance changes. So that's what I want to talk about. The Conquest map changes. Now, the map is more open, so it's a lot easier to invade, and it's a lot easier to retreat also. So, for example, the speed buff and the blue buff, it's no longer encaved inside. You don't have to commit inside the buffs. There's a lot more open space for mobility in that regard. There's some jungle camp changes here. Now, the purple buff attack speed has been completely removed, and in its place is a boar camp, which actually gives you a lot of golden experience. Not as much as the purple buff, but a decent amount. Now, I don't know specific reset in terms of the cooldown for when it's going to reset after its death, but it's definitely still worth trying to farm this as soon as possible. After you get the wave, you go back and clear this camp ASAP. Now, speed buff was moved and changed. Now, it's no longer where it used to be in Season 2. It got moved up towards the fire giant, and now it's 3 little fire minions, and each little fire minion gives you 7% movement speed and 7% attack speed buff for you for 20 seconds, which stacks, going up to 21% movement speed and 21% attack speed for 60 seconds. This buff does not give you that much gold or experience, but the buff is very powerful. So it's going to entice some strategies for a jungler to want to get this buff as soon as possible and make plays around the map while you have it. Especially if you're Mercury. Having movement speed and attack speed on Mercury is very nice on him. The blue buff was now moved to where the speed buff was, and the old blue buff is now at the boar camp. Changes to lifesteal. So basically, the changes to lifesteal was if the enemy god had, like, let's say 1 health, for example, and you crit them for 600 damage, you're only going to be lifestealing off of the 1 health that they had. You're not going to be lifestealing off of 600 damage that you did, which is a nice little change. Some highlighting options. It's going to be interesting to see for aiming purposes. Not really anything too crazy. Now, active items are now renamed to relics, and everyone gets them at level 1. And the second relic that you can get unlocks at level 12. Now, this is a good and a bad thing. They did this change because they wanted to entice new players to force them into picking up a relic at level 1, because going off of their stats and their recordings, a lot of people in casual conquest weren't picking up relics. So now they're kind of forced to. Now, in that regard, it's a bad thing, because there's a lot of unique builds that you could do in Season 2, Season 1, which you either get an active for an invade, maybe a blink, maybe a creeping curse, whatever the case is, maybe hog steal. And now there's less unique builds opening because of that effect. However, it's going to allow for a lot of dynamic team fighting at level 1 right off the bat. So from a spectator point of view, it's really entertaining. So that's pretty cool. And as a result of it being unlocked at level 1, all these relics are going to be very powerful. They're going to be very potent. They're tier 3 actives, basically, as strong as tier 3 actives would have been. Now, because of the fact that you get a level 1, a lot of these actives were nerfed. So that's a little compensation there. So now teleport is basically a 180-second cooldown. A lot of soul laners used to get teleport. I don't expect a lot of soul laners to get teleport any longer. 180 seconds. There's a lot better actives that I'll talk about. Purification. This used to be called Purification Beads. It now gives you a 1-second CC immunity only. It no longer gives you the cooldown reduction by 3 seconds. And its cooldown got nerfed to 160 seconds. So this active is no longer worth getting. Now, as a result of this active getting nerfed, it's going to entice more guardians with crowd control to be picked up, like Athena, Ymir, gods that'll Ares, gods that'll force you to pop this purification. It doesn't last that long at all. Anyway, moving on. Sanctuary was renamed from the Aegis Pendant. This is basically a moving Aegis, which gives you immune to damage for 2 seconds. You cannot attack, and you cannot do any actions other than move. 160-second cooldown. Blink, using this item, allows you to teleport short distances. Basically the same thing. 120-second cooldown. You need to be out of combat for 5 seconds. This is basically Weakening Curse with 120-second cooldown instead of 60. Scout. If you guys are old school players, you'll remember this active called Eye of Providence. This is basically the same thing. You drop a Sentry Ward and cooldown's 140 seconds. This might be enticing for some soul laners that are very enticing to gank against the jungler. You might see this, but more than likely not. I don't expect it. Wrath. This is basically Hand of the Gods. It does 480 damage, 15 unit radius to a single enemy or jungle monster. This item deals 1,000 damage to jungle bosses, so like Gold Fury Fire Giant, and the subsequent effects from your team on the same target will deal 50% more damage, so it's a lot easier to secure Gold Fury Fire Giant. This item is definitely going to be a must-buy second relic for like the supports. I would expect them to pick this item up. You definitely want to secure Fire Giant, so this is a must-buy. Sprint, basically, is a heavenly agility with a 140-second cooldown. Shell got nerfed in the cooldown reduction, but it's definitely still really potent here. 45 protection buff and damage taken by 15% reduction. This is almost a must-buy level 1 for supports against heavy burst teams. Frenzy is basically like Girdle of Power, 70 unit radius. You give your team a 20% physical and magical power buff for 10 seconds, and they deal additional 20% damage to objectives for the duration, which is very nice combination to get Frenzy and Wrath on the same time. The only difference is this is a 120 seconds. Meditation, 120-second cooldown, 35% of the owner's maximum mana, and 15% of the owner's health. So this might be a second relic picked up by certain soul laners that want to stack health and want to heal their team. If you want to be a heal bot, this is definitely worth considering. Sunder. Now this is a new active, or relic should I say, where it's a line skill shot, so you could miss it. And what it does is it does 40 true damage, which is very important to note. True damage. So it ignores protections completely. And it does 14 damage per player level and reduces target's protections by 25% for 4 seconds. So this could be a good idea to get a level 1 if you want to do some very sort of cheeky level 1 invade, very aggressive. Or you could pick this up as a second relic if you're against a team that's stacking a lot of protections. Sentry Ward's got a reduction in terms of vision range from 60 to 45. Defensive items. There are a lot of defensive items to go over, so let's go ahead and take a look here. So first thing to talk about is the Breastplate of Valor. The cooldown reduction was nerfed from 25% to 20%. Now, a lot of cooldown reduction was nerfed, by 5% specifically. So let's look at this new item, Spectral Armor. It branches off of the Silver Breastplate. It gives you 80 physical protection, 300 mana, 25% crowd control reduction. Now, because Purification relic is very like non-existent, it's a 1 second cooldown reduction, or rather 1 second CC immunity. Crowd control reduction items are going to be very enticing to pick up, so Spectral Armor might be picked up here. Now its passive is Lifesteal is 50% less effective against you. Each time you are hit by a Lifesteal effect, there's a 30% chance you gain an additional 20 physical protection for 5 seconds. This cannot occur more than once every 20 seconds. This item is worth 2,300 gold, and it might be picked up to test out, but against a hunter with Executioner, he's still going to be doing a lot of damage to you. And the fact that this doesn't give you health, it's not going to be very easy to stick on a hunter. Even though the enemy is going to have less lifesteal, you're going to basically still die. You're basically killing each other as fast as you can, and the hunter's probably going to win if they have Executioner. Height of Nemean Lion. It branches off of the Silver Breastplate. It no longer gives you the 200 health. It now gives you instead the 200 mana. It has a 10 protection buff, and the price was reduced by 50. This is the Tier 2 item, Steel Mail. Reduction from physical from 40 to 20. That's a pretty big nerf for a Tier 2 item. Now, next item, Mystical Mail. Nobody's going to pick up this item any longer. I'm definitely not going to be picking it up because the gold is still the same at 2850. The health was increased by 80, but the protections was nerfed by 30, which is very huge nerf. And the fact that the gold is still 2850, I'm not going to be picking up Mystical Mail. Guardian Mail, however, the fact that it's 2250 gold is still a very cheap buy, and its aura is very good against gods with a lot of attack speed. So let's say, for example, against the Mercury jungle, and let's say Ram or Apollo in the hunter position, Guardian Mail is still really good. Sovereignty, next item here, they basically changed the aura. Instead of giving magical protections, it gives you physical protections, and they reduced the protections from 50 to 30 to compensate for the switch that they did. Next item here is the Glowing Emerald. This is now a Glowing Emerald tree that they added to the game. This item gives you 100 health and 10 HP 5 for 750 gold. Now, a lot of Soul Laners might be enticed to pick up a lot of these HP 5 items because of the fact that you're no longer going to be picking up Teleport with the 180-second cooldown on that item. So this is definitely a good tree to look at if you're a Soul Laner. Next tier 2 item is the Emerald Talisman, which gives you 200 health, 20 HP 5, 6 MP 5, same exact passive. The difference is it gives you extra health and extra HP 5 at tier 2. Next is the Stone of Gaia, which gives you basically 350 health, and it just basically removed the magic protection. So this is good for, obviously, against physical and against magical. Unfortunately, you no longer get the magical protection, but you get more health. So that's pretty cool. So Silver Mail was renamed to Emerald Mail. It now branches off of the Glowing Emerald. It no longer provides physical protection. It gives you a nerf in the cost. Or a buff, I should say, rather. It was changed. And now gives you 10 HP 5. Mail Renewal gives you HP 5. Cooldown reduction nerfed by 5%. Health increased by 100. Still going to be picked up in certain situations. If you want to be a jungler that gets Jotun's Wrath and Mail Renewal, you're going to be getting less cooldown reduction, but, you know, killing gods or getting an assist off of them is still going to be enticing. Next item. Gauntlet of Thieves. It's back, boys. Gauntlet of Thieves, if you guys remember, used to be a very powerful item with a lot of health, a lot of regeneration. It's back. 400 health, 25 HP 5, increases all healing received by 20%. Wow. Some Soul Laners are going to be impossible to kill with this item. It's 2,300 gold. It's still going to be it's going to be a must-buy, in my opinion, still. That's a lot of HP 5. That is a lot of HP 5. Anyway, next item. Pestilence. Because there's a lot of items to go over, so I just got to, go through them. Now, health reduced by 100. However, protections increased by 15. Bulwark of Hope. They changed the passive, but before we go over the passive, they reduced the health by 100. They reduced the magic protection by 10. But the passive now provides... Oh, wait. I'm talking about the hardwood damage. Derp. Okay. I thought I was talking about the Bulwark of Hope because I had that up there. But anyway, the Hardwood Amulet, basically, it swapped the physical protection aura with the magical protection aura, the health reduction, the magical protection. It still might be picked up here by certain supports that want to get that MP5 and spam their abilities. Maybe a Guan Yu support, get that MP5 going. Spam it. Spam all the things. Bulwark of Hope now that I have the correct picture on the screen. Reduce the health from 450 to 200. Crowd control reduction by 20%, which is huge. And the passive change, now the passive used to give 50% damage reduction for 1 second once you reach 30% health. Now instead you get a 150 health shield aura. Not aura, I'm sorry. The aura would be really powerful. But 150 health shield for 150 plus 15 per player level. So what does this mean? At level 20, you get 450 health shield. It cannot occur more than once every 60 seconds. I don't expect this item to be picked up as much as it used to be. The crowd control reduction is pretty cool though. This new tree right here provides new options for magical protection and MP5 regeneration. This is the tier 1 at 800 gold, 30 magical protection and 5 MP5. This is the tier 2 at 1250 gold. This is pretty good at tier 2. 1250, this gives 50 protections for magical, 10% crowd control reduction, and 15 MP5. This is nice for tier. Next item is the Genji's Guard. 2600 gold, 80 magic protection, 20% crowd control reduction, 20 MP5, and your HP5 is increased by 150%, and your movement speed by 20% for 5 seconds upon taking magical damage. This cannot occur more than once every 30 seconds. This is very good if you're a warrior facing a magical soul laner. This is almost a must pick up just to experiment with right off the bat. Now keep in mind, this is PTS, so don't be afraid to experiment with these new items, because I know I will be, for sure. Oni's Hunter's Garb. 60 magical protection. This is a new item, by the way. Tier 3. This is why it has a temporary art. There's still, like, don't be confused by the question mark. 60 magic protection, 15% crowd control reduction, 20 MP5, and the passive is every 10 seconds you are out of combat, you gain a 15% magical protection for a maximum of 3 stacks. Upon taking magical damage from 1 stack is removed. So this is good against gods like Hebo and Freya specifically. Now we're going into the Cudgel Tree. This is the Runeforged Hammer. Now this is a very interesting change that they did to Runeforged Hammer. They reduced the health from 350 to 200. They increased the cost from 2050 to 2700. So it's a lot harder to finish this item. However, they made this item with 30 physical power, and now your abilities now deal an additional 15% of your physical power as magical damage against enemies, and 30% of your physical power as magical damage against slowed or rooted or crippled enemies. What does this mean? Gods like Guan Yu that use their Warrior's Will into the Talu Assault is going to be doing more damage. So this is a good item to pick up if you're a warrior against another warrior, so you have a little bit of more damage against that warrior. Smithy's Hammer is removed from the game. Now Heavy Hammer is the tier 2 item that branches off from into Runeforged or Heavy Hammer. Oh, I'm sorry, into the Frostbound Hammer. So now this no longer provides a passive effect slow. For me specifically, what I would do is I would actually pick up this item on some gods in the soul lane if I was going to invade with my jungler. Now I'm not going to be picking up this item right off the bat because there's no slow passive on it. It increased the physical power and the health. Next item is the Frostbound Hammer here. They reduced the health by 25, and then they reduced the slow duration by 0.75 seconds. This item is still really solid to pick up here. I would definitely still encourage a lot of soul laners to pick up this item to kind of box a heavy attack-based assassin like a Mercury or a Hunter in the late game. Shield of Regrowth, increased physical power to 30. Shifter Shield, increased base magical and physical protections by 5. Void Shield, it was a nice little change here. 5 physical power change, and then a 5 physical protection aura increase from 15 to 20. Enchanted Buckler Tree, the Ankile, 5% cooldown reduction, and the new passive is you gain 0.5% physical power for every 1% missing health. This is very good for, like, let's say Hercules, for example. It's just going to make his passive that much more potent than it already is. Spirit Robe, it's 5% cooldown reduction, provides 10% crowd control reduction. Still going to be a must-buy in certain situations. I feel like everybody's going to get Spirit Robe now because of the fact that 10% crowd control reduction. 10% still, like, it may not seem like a lot, but it is a lot. Hide of the Urchin is basically the same item with the exception. It gives you less protections to start, but you're going to end up with the same amount of protections once you get those 10 stacks. Now, this is a new tier 3 item, 3,600 gold. It's called Cloak of Unrelenting Sorrow. It branches from the Cloak of Concentration. This gives you 60 protections from both magical and physical. It gives you a 15% cooldown reduction, and now its aura says if you take damage below 30% health, you unleash a shockwave that stuns all enemies within a range of 20 units for 1 second and gain CC immunity for 1 second. This effect cannot trigger more than once every 90 seconds. This is good for gods like, let's say, Anubis, where you're stationary, you're a sitting duck. You can use your Plague Locust, I believe it's called, and it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to stay on you. Now, this is a very late game item, so it's not going to help you during laning phase if you're a mid Anubis or a soul lane Anubis, but it's going to allow you to survive for sure against assassins that are trying to dive you in the late game. Next item here is, now we're going into the offensive item, boys. We're going into Soul Eater first. This item no longer provides any sort of health. This is a good change because hunters with health was not fun to deal with. Now, attack speed increased from 15 to 30%, which compensates for the lack of health. You want people to obviously still pick up this item. And the new passive is killing an enemy, Easter Soul. Get it? Soul Eater? I got you. So, you get 0.5% lifesteal and 0.5% movement speed for a maximum of 20 stacks. So that's 10% additional lifesteal and 10% additional movement speed once you get max stacks. And if you take damage below 50% health, all stacks are consumed, restoring 1% of your maximum health per stack. So 20 stacks, 20% health heal. This is really good on a jungler now. Because you get the movement speed, you go from one jungle camp to another, you're basically clearing camps as soon as you can, and then you're ganking lanes whenever you can. And then as long as you're ganking, you can survive the counter gank very easily as well once that pops. Next item is the tier 2 version of it, the Bound Gauntlet. That gives you 10% physical lifesteal and 50% attack speed at 1100 gold. It's pretty nice pickup here. Now this is a new tree called the Katana tree. It's focused on items that provide physical power and movement speed, a very potent combination, especially for assassins. Tier 1, 800 gold, Katana, 10 physical power, 5% movement speed. 1000-fold blade, 15 power, 8% movement speed at 1300 gold. Masamune is the tier 3 item of this, which for 2400 gold, 30 physical power, 10% movement speed. Its passive is you deal additional physical power damage against targets with more maximum health than you, equal to 1 power for every 10 health difference, to a maximum of 50 damage. I don't know the math specifically. I didn't do it in the spreadsheet quite yet, but I definitely will. Basically, this is good as an assassin if you're trying to fight a warrior that has a lot more health than you. So that means if you could still be an assassin in the soul lane against warriors, and you don't have to really, worry too much because you have this option for you. Stone Cutting Sword is another tier 3 item here, where it gives you 50 physical power, 10% movement speed, and it gives you it's basically the Ichival effect, where it decreases the enemy's physical protections and it gives you physical protections reduces their protections by 10, increases yours by 10 for a maximum of 3 stacks. And it's 3100 gold. It's a very expensive item, but it's a lot of physical power. So if you are ahead, you can stay more ahead with this item. Heartseeker. Reduce the cost from 1890 to 1800. And its passive is, it's when you hit an enemy with a basic attack, you gain 3% attack speed for a maximum of 5 stacks. So it's a maximum of 15% additional attack speed. And at 5 stacks, your next ability cast gains an additional 40% physical power. So hunters that have a lot of good scaling, even Neith, for example, with her global ultimate, let's say you get those 5 stacks, and then you fire an ultimate in the mid lane, boom. Right there, that ultimate is going to be doing more damage. So this is a nice item in certain situations. Executioner got a buff in terms of gods that have a lot of physical protection. You definitely want to pick this up as soon as possible. Gives you a 6% protection debuff on the enemy for 6 stacks. So a total of 30% protection, which is amazing. That's a lot of protection debuff there. Next that we're talking about is chin size, increased power from 30 to 40, and it decreased the cost from 2850 to 2700. Now, a lot of these protective items, defensive rather, they have a lot of health, a lot of protections. Now, executioner and chin size, on the opposite side, when you increase the defensive items, you want to increase the offensive items to compensate for that. So this is a very nice little change here to entice people to pick up chin size to deal with the tankiness. Brawler's Beatstick. Now, before I go into Brawler's Beatstick, there's Yoden's Wrath. I don't even have a picture of it. 5% cooldown reduction, 1 physical penetration nerf, whatever. Brawler's Beatstick. So now the passive works off of ability hits instead of basic attacks. This is really good for Neith, again, where you gank the solo laner, you gank the mid laner from the dual lane, you just throw your ultimate out there, and they have less healing. Again, like I mentioned, against gods, if you're in the soul lane, you might want to pick up some HP 5 items. Now, if you get hit by a Neith ultimate, you're going to be getting less HP 5. And against gods like Ra in the mid lane, you're going to be getting less healing when you get hit by that Neith ultimate. So, in that regard, this is going to be very enticing for Neith. Next item, Crusher. Basically, the passive gives you attack speed 10% per stack and increases penetration by 5 per stack, and no longer gives you movement speed. The Hydra's Lament, the additional damage from the passive from 25% to 30%, And the tier 2 item has been removed completely. Doom Orb is back. At maximum stacks, it gives you 100 magical power. So basically, total would be 140 magical power, 200 mana, 7 MP5. This is going to be a nice snowball item from the early game. Demonic Grip is basically the Executioner, except it's going to be for the magical side of things. Telekine's Ring increased attack speed from 10% to 30% and reduced the additional damage on the passive from 40 to 35, and it removed the health from this item. I think this item is going to be very interesting to pick up on gods like Jean-Qui and Sylvanas. It's a little bit of a troll build, and we'll see how that kind of goes as the PTS rolls forward. Voidstone got a little bit of buff on the aura by 5. Nice, nice, nice. Spirit of Desolation, 3,700 gold. Now, this is a very nice item, by the way. 130 magical power, 30 magical penetration. That's a lot of penetration with magical power in one item. And then its passive is, if you kill an enemy god, all of your cooldowns are reduced by 8 seconds. So that allows for a huge momentum swing in a team fight. If you, for whatever reason, get dove by the enemy jungler, and then you use all your cooldowns, you burst them, you kill them, and now you can make a huge impact in the remainder of the team fight once you do kill that jungler. So this item is a must pick up alongside of Rada Tahuti. It's going to make you do so much damage. Polynomicon got a little bit of a buff from 60% to 75%. Yep, they basically want Polynomicon to be picked up here. Also, they changed it, it looks like. I think that... yeah. Oh, okay. I thought that they changed it in terms of, like, if it has to hit. But now, no. Like, if you miss, you still miss. It's not going to have the effect if you miss. I thought they changed that for whatever reason, but no, they didn't. The tier... Some of these items that were never picked up are still not going to get picked up here. Celestial Legion Helm and Dynasty Plate Helm. Nobody's going to pick that up. Uncommon Sash Tree here. Ethereal Staff got a little bit of a nerf and a buff at the same time. So the nerf was that they reduced the health by 200, but then the buff was that it's 2.5% health instead of 2%. So in Soul Lane, as a Guardian, sometimes I would get Ethereal Staff if I wanted to team fight right off the bat, because I don't want to sit in lane building the Warlock Sash stacks. Now, I might still want to sit in lane and get Warlock Sash and then get E-Staff right immediately after that if I'm a Guardian. This is a new tree, Shoryuken. It's basically crit options here. Tier 1 for 900 gold, 10 physical power, 10% critical strike. Tier 2, 1500 gold, 15 power, 15 crit chance. Tier 3, this is a new item, 2800 gold, 40 physical power, 20% critical strike chance. Your critical hits now also reduce healing on enemies by 40% for 3 seconds. So you can build this, you can get Brawler's Beatstick, and you can basically have a lot of anti-healing. Rage here. Let's go over the Rage. So Deathbringer increased the cost from 3150 to 3200. The Rage decreased the cost from 2755 to 2600, so it's more enticing to pick up. The base critical strike chance was reduced by 10%. However, it increased the number of maximum stacks on the passive from 5 to 6, even though it was pretty easy to get crits. I never expect anyone to stay at 5 or 6 stacks right off the bat. You have to have some really unfortunate luck, RNG luck, to not get past like 3 or 4 stacks. Like if you get past 3 or 4 stacks, you are just unlucky. And also Malice was nerfed by 100 gold. Alright. We are done with all the item changes. That was a lot of item changes. This video is going to be quite long, I'm sure. Let's get rid of this. God changes. Finally. We made it, boys. We made it. Alpwash, the Hollow Ground, which is his first ability. It reduces the... No, I'm sorry. The Undead Surge is his first ability. It reduces the slow from 40% to 20% at level 1 to 40% at max rank, which is a very nice change. Hollow Ground reduced the restoration from 6% to 5%. Now, a lot of players were building Alpwash very tanky with Breastplate of Valor, Ethereal Staff, making it very enticing to go Alpwash tanky, very difficult to kill. You just spam your corpses on the ground, you pick them up. Now it's going to be a little bit difficult, but that 1% maximum health is still going to be... Like, if you were building Alpwash tanky, you're still going to be building Alpwash tanky, and you can still get away with doing a spam corpses, baiting cooldowns and healing everything up. Unless all these items with anti-healing prevent you from doing so, which might be the case actually. Amaterasu, her ultimate, Dazzling Offensive, now plays a distinct bell chime noise on all 3 strikes. Now, if you remember the old Guan Yu ultimate, it made a very, impactful, when you were getting hit by Guan Yu ultimate, and when he casted, you knew when he was casting it. When they released Amaterasu, it was a little bit muffled in some ability, or her ultimate, so now they made it a little bit easier to hear it coming. Quang, they basically increased a little bit of his stats. If you played Ao Quang before, you're still going to be playing Ao Quang. If you didn't play Ao Quang before, you're not going to be playing Ao Quang now. Artemis. This change to her boar is very interesting. I want to see just how fast it actually goes. So now before, if you guys remember her boar, it takes forever to go from one target to the next. So a lot of people can just easily run away from the boar. Now, instead of waiting 1.5 seconds to hit her next target, it's going to be 0.5 seconds. That actually might allow more Artemis playtime here in the PTS, just off of this alone. Bologna got a little bit of a nerf here. They reduced the slam bonus damage from 30% to 25% per god hit. And the Scourge was... I like the Scourge change here. If you played Bologna before, you're still going to be playing Bologna now. The nerf was not that much of a hit in terms of anything, really. I think the best way to nerf Bologna, in my opinion, during laning phase, they need to make it that if you cancel the bludgeon, she no longer wields the hammer at all. And that'll hurt her laning phase, and as a result, that'll make it less enticing to play her. And if you beat her in laning phase, and you can shut her down because of that, then she won't be so impactful in the remainder of the game. Now, Bakasor got really nice buffs, and I really like it. So they increased his base physical power scaling from 36 to 38. His Eat Minion, the buff duration was from 5 seconds before, and now it's at 10 seconds. So this lasts a long time. This allows him to box warriors a very long time. And they reduced the cooldown from 18 seconds to 14 to 15 seconds at all ranks. They reduced the mana cost from 75 to 55. Bakasura will not be played against Bolognas, but if it's not a Bologna, you might see more Bakasuras in the solo lane, especially considering the fact there's a lot of defensive items in the solo lane warrior side of things. Chiron. Multiple instances of healing no longer stacked, but instead refresh the duration. Masterful Shot. Cooldown increased from 14 to 16 seconds. I believe this was his second ability. Nice little nerf there. People are still definitely going to be playing Chiron. He's still going to be a big impact during laning phase, and he's very hard to kill. He's a slightly better Neith, basically, without the global. Increased base movement speed from 365 to 375. This is very nice because now it's a lot easier to chase people with Talu Assault, and it's going to be a lot easier to chase people with your horse. And now they changed the Cavalry Charge where it fixed a bug where Cavalry Charge won't go into cooldown if Capri revives him in the middle of it. Interesting, I didn't know that was a bug. Hades. This is the best change in the whole patch, guys. Hades. Hades has been reclassified from a Guardian to a Mage. God bless you, Iris Studios. It took you 3 years, but you finally did it. It's now a Mage. Kali is going to be way more played in the PCS now. Now, Mark for Death, which is her passive, is now rewarded on kills or assists, which is huge. Kali now heals 80% of her maximum health on kills and 15% on assists. So it's basically like a Mail of Renewal passive guaranteed on her passive. And it increased the gold bonus from 25% to 30%. It also affects your assist gold, so that's huge. There's definitely going to be a lot more Kalis running around. It's going to be crazy. Capri. Rising Dawn, which is his second ability. It reduced the damage reduction by basically 5% on all ranks, which is very nice. Scarab's Blessing. It fixed a tooltip error stating the power, reduced the range from 65 to 55. That's a good little nerf here. Odin is a very nice little change here. They increased his movement speed by 10, and his Ring of Spears, he can now finally go through the Ring of Spears. So he was the only one that was still stuck in his ultimate, and now he can run away. And the duration was increased to 6 seconds. I believe it used to be 5 seconds. So there might be a lot more Odins, especially coming out of the jungle. Because if you initiate now with your ultimate, you can now run away if things go south. Ravana, reduced the damage scaling on his Piranha Assault. 10-handed Shadow Fist, increased the cooldown from 15 seconds to 18 seconds. He's still going to be very highly picked and played in the solo lane once he's allowed and ranked. I can't wait. Nemesis, the passive is changed. Nemesis holds the scale of balance, hitting enemies with basic attacks, reduces their physical or magical power by 4% per hit, while increasing her own physical power by 4% from 4 seconds. Now, before, this didn't used to work on minions, and now it does. So it's going to be enticing for junglers to pick this up. Now, with all the defensive item changes, Nemesis is going to see a lot more light because she was the tank shredder. She was like basically the counter pick to Zhang Kui middle. And now her ultimate got a 20-second cooldown change, which is huge because a lot of cooldown items was nerfed. But now the fact that her ultimate is 70 seconds, she's definitely going to be picked up a lot. Serket reduced the base movement speed from 380 to 370. Now, this is huge because two things. Number one, she's annoying to deal with. Like, her mobility with her abilities, her cooldown was so short that she can go in, use her abilities, beads out, use her abilities, and then you still can't catch her because she has 380 movement speed. But now they nerfed her cooldowns on both of her escapes, so it's going to be a lot harder to initiate and escape at the same time. Once you initiate, you're going to be initiating and you're staying in there. You are not going to be able to get out as you used to be as Serket. So this was a very beautiful nerf to Serket. I don't expect many Serkets anymore. However, you might still see Serket played if you want to run a strategy where you kill solo laners, right? Like tanky solo laners, Serket, Nemesis. You'd run a double assassin between solo jungle. You could run that kind of a strategy. Soul's her Stellar Burst, which is her second ability. That's her lane clear. The ability no longer slows. Nice nerf there. Warrior's Madness, which is his passive. It reduces physical power buff from 15 to 10. Which is a huge nerf because if you think about the 3v3 jungle fights between the middle jungler and support and the mid harpies, now you're getting 5 physical power nerf and you're getting basically 15 less physical power in these 3v3s. Tectonic Rift is now 17 seconds at all ranks. Vamana, boys. I am definitely going to be playing the baby in the PTS. So increases the base movement speed from 365 to 380. So this means that during your ultimate, it's going to be a lot easier to lock down certain gods and chase them down. Colossal Fear increased the radius of damage in his ultimate from 12 to 16. So that's basically a 33% AoE buff. It's going to be a lot easier to hit multiple targets in certain situations. Especially if like it's a Kabrakan ultimate or something like that. Odin got buff. So if you have an Odin jungle with a Vamana in the solo lane. Yeah. We'll probably see some Odin Vamanas maybe in the PTS. That'll be a cool little combination. Shin Chen got a little bit of a nerf here where his Furious Roar, which is his first ability, goes from 15 to 11 seconds to 14 seconds at all ranks. And also with all the cooldown reduction nerfs in the items, he's going to be less potent, but he might still be played quite heavily. The Hook Slam, they reduced the axe damage. The damage wasn't the issue. The issue is the cooldowns. But the fact that they reduce cooldown items makes it a lot easier to survive against Xing Chen. You don't have to worry about him being too obnoxious, but he's still going to be obnoxious. Now, another really great change that they did was the Ymir. They fixed an issue where he would T-pose on death. Now, I don't know what a T-pose is like. What? You're just doing this? You're just staying still like this. Basically, that's a T-pose. God bless you, Hyris, for fixing that. And thank you for letting us know, because that is a very important change. I'm just kind of poking at them, guys. But anyway, that's it for all the patch notes. That was so much to cover. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please, don't be mad at some of these changes. It is the PTS. There's a lot of changes. Harris wants you to try these out, and make sure to give them feedback. Be active in the Smite Reddit and give feedback. play the PTS, have fun with it. I know I will. I will be giving a lot of feedback in this PTS. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of my content. And I'll catch you guys on my stream. Love you.